Well, would you look at that? There are now two duels going on. One between a Discunte and the manifestation of humanity's will, and the other between a Rumelian and a man without cursed energy. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact, here we are to read chapter 6 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, which is known as Malicious Light. And my, I will readily admit, from the bottom of my left big toe, that Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo has been hitting for your boy. It's been hitting and then hitting and then hitting. It's been kind of beating the taste out my mouth, left, right, and center. I ain't gonna lie to you about that. But one thing that was admittedly causing me to scratch and itch and like need to go back and maybe look and talk about for a fix of some sort. I was kind of missing a little bit of the action. I'm not gonna lie to you. Obviously, Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is a fundamentally different story from JJK. I would almost barely call it a battle manga, if a battle manga at all. It's like a manga that happens to have battles in it, rather than JJK being a battle manga that happens to have good character writing stories in it. But in the case of that, I was a little bit disappointed, you know. I'm fine, you know. I love me some good character work. Characters are always number one for your boy, but this is Geigyaku Tommy, right? This was the person that was going band for band, hand for hand with Prime Suzuki Sensei, the mangaka of Sakamoto Days in terms of the action. If you were to ask me which one of the two had better choreography week over week, I would give you darn near a different answer every time, because they were that good at it. And you know, I wasn't thinking Gege lost their touch or anything. You know, Gege does all the storyboards for Modulo, so like clearly they still had a little bit of their bag in there. We saw a hint of it back in the Taka fight. We saw a little bit of it, but you know, I was kind of fiending for it. And I think I wasn't alone. And I think Gege themselves were not alone. I'm just being a little itty bit of a fiend for it, because this chapter takes both sides of Modulo that have been working really, really well and merges them together. Really, it's three sides. Modulo is a story of three pieces: the story itself, the characters, and then the art/action. And this chapter takes all of them and smacks it together to create one of my favorite chapters so far. So let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into chapter 16 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, which is known as Malicious Light. So, with that being the case, we open up and get a little bit of lore, a little bit of history, a little bit of explanation for why, despite Yuka being a Ten Shadows user from the start of the manga, we didn't see it, as we get explained to the narrator. The Ten Shadows technique, a hereditary... Why can I read? The Ten Shadows technique, a hereditary curse technique passed down through the Zenin clan, one of the former Big Three sorcerer families. It allows the user to summon Shikigami using the shadows as an intermediary, but it is currently considered a forbidden technique within the Gojo clan. Yuka Akotsu has been only permitted to use the application of the technique that allows her to draw out the abilities of certain Shikigami. So, a couple things here. Number one, this does confirm that now the Zenin clan is essentially just a subsidiary of the Gojo clan. Notably, the Zenin clan was actually a lot more diverse than the Gojo clan. The Gojo clan kind of just had Limitless and Six Eyes. Same thing with the Kamo clan. The Kamo clan, as far as you know, kind of just had blood manipulation. That was it. Like, we didn't really... Unless you think Kenjaku was always originally part of the Kamo clan. It wasn't just, you know, Noritoshi Kamo, the guy from 150 years ago. That did, like, you know, was Kenjaku doing the whole hybrid womb thing, like that. If you think he was originally that, then maybe Kenjaku's technique is another extension of the Kamo clan's abilities. But the Gojo clan was just Limitless and Six Eyes, and notably Limitless and Six Eyes is a very rare combination that showed up, as far as we know, three times, I think, because there's the initial time, then there was a 140 years ago, because we know, or at least we know it's three times, because Kenjaku, who's been around since like the series inception essentially, lost to the Six Eyes twice before Gojo. First time he lost, second time he had spawn camped, then he lost, then Gojo showed up. So like, we know there are three instances, but maybe four, because we don't know if the instant from 400 years ago overlaps with either of those two previous instances where Kenjaku was involved. So there could have been more, like, but we know the gap between the Edo periods, or I believe it's the Edo 400 years ago, and Gojo, that's how big the gap was between the last Limitless Six Eyes user. So for like 400 years, the Gojo clan was cruising on straight vibes. But now, with the Zenin clan entirely annihilated by Maki Zenin, they essentially got to have free access to that in two ways. Well, we don't know if Megami himself had any kids. Hard to tell. But at least thanks to Maki and Yuta having kids, now the possibilities of the Zenin clan's inherited techniques are just a part of the Gojo clan. That's why it's called the Zenin clan techniques, a subsidiary of the Gojo clan, which has now buffed them up. And obviously, naturally, with the Kamo clan essentially being entirely wiped out by Kenjaku as far as I know, or at least, nerfed a whole lot by Kenjaku's reappearance as Noritoshi Kamo, quote unquote. And then, of course, Makiing all over the place and annihilating the Zenin clan. The Gojo fans and the Gojo clan won. Like they won. Like, they are Jujutsu Society now. They're the only big three family, and it's just the big one. Forget the big three, it's just big me, if I were the Gojo clan saying a phrase like that. So, all that to say, it's really wild and random that they restricted Yuka. And you may be like, well, what do you mean? It makes perfect sense why they restricted Yuka. Last time someone had access to the Ten Shadows technique in any way, shape, or form, they slaughtered the super prodigy man who acted as a balance patch to the entire universe. Of course they banned it. Yeah, but remember who Yuka's grandfather is? Yeah, Yuta Kotsu. Remember one of the only other surviving Zenin clan members, at least for a while? Megami? Yeah. Why did they, I don't get how they got away with that. I want to know when they banned it. Do you mean to tell me Yuta was there and he approved that? I forget. In fact, I'm gonna look. Where's my Googler? I have it in my pocket. Hold on. I'm gonna look up. I'm pretty sure Yuta became the head of the Gojo clan. How, why would he approve? I'm generally trying to think. Was Yuta the head of the Gojo clan at... Hold on, let me just look at what's Yuta the head of the Gojo clan. Was he being the head of the Gojo clan? Makes sense, loosely related. That's enough for Gojo clan to pick him. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to the wiki, and it seems like... Let me go. Yeah, by 2035, Yuta had become the head of the Gojo clan. He eventually married Maki Zenin and had two grandchildren, Tsurugi and Yuka Kotsu. But both passed by old age, passing away by 2080. So, Yuta was the head of the Gojo. Why did he ban the technique? The main reason I say this, right, is it'd be one thing if maybe she was his great-grandchild and he didn't know, but Yuta was alive and loved his granddaughter. Why would he limit his granddaughter's potential like this? What do you mean she's not allowed to use the technique she was born with? It's like an inverse situation of the Maki situation where, oh, you were born without a curse technique, you're buns, you're trash, gee, we're not going to give you any sort of support at all. But instead it's Yuka. Oh, you were born with the curse technique that just happened to be part of the plot that just happened to slaughter one Gojo clan guy? Womp womp, I guess you're never allowed to reach your full potential. You can never actually summon... that's kind of insane. Why not? Why? Really, Yuta? Because Yuta had to clear that. If he was the head all the way until his death, which I find no reason why not. Why would he approve that? Did he not have veto power? Did Yuta himself come up with the ban? That's kind of crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I get why we're getting the lore of it being banned. It explains why we only see Yuka use the Savage Claw Strike, and also why we didn't see her use it throughout the arrest, even though obviously we didn't see her fight too much. But still, that explains all that. But in universe, it makes Yuta seem really weird, especially considering how much he loved Yuka. That's my other main point, right? It'd be one thing if he didn't care about Yuka. If he was if he had grown mean and cruel and aloof, and but no, he loved his grandbaby. He cared deeply for his grandbaby. He gave his ring to his grandbaby initially. It was only after he passed away that the ring was slid away. So I want to say, for the sake of me maintaining Yuta's character consistency from what has been established in Modulo and also the original series and also the original series, I'm going to say it was banned after Yuta died. I'm going to assume because I believe, when did they pass away? It was 2080. We're currently in 2087, I think. So I'm going to assume Yuka for the first 8-9 years of her life had full access to the Ten Shadows technique. It was only after Yuta died, and I guess his kids just had no power anymore, that's when they banned it. Because there's no way Yuta would ban that. There's no way. Especially him, Mr. I need to eat people in order to use their ability. There's no way he actually banned the Ten Shadows. That'd be actually kind of crazy. But there is that. It was banned. That's why you can use it in the way she does. Another thing this proves, the ability to manifest the abilities of the Ten Shadows without actually summoning the Ten Shadows is just a universal thing. There was a hot debate for a while on whether or not that was the thing Megami could have ever achieved. Especially when the full potential Megami, Prime Megami videos were coming out. People were wondering, is that just a Sukuna thing? Just taming Mahoraga is a Sukuna thing, was the taming of Mahoraga a prerequisite in order for a Shikigami user or of the Ten Shadows to do that? Clearly not. Yuka's able to do it, and that means that anyone with the Ten Shadows technique could do it. It probably was just rare. Megami, while he had a couple fights, he just never got to that level with the Ten Shadows. Or if it is like a level thing versus just like a knowledge thing. Like maybe he didn't know he could do it, but then Sukuna did it, and then he figured out how to do it just as a byproduct of that. We don't know. But there's all that just in like the first text box. Then, of course, we get this. The 8-handled Sword Divergent Seal of Divine General, Mahoraga. Avoiding, wait, I don't know why I keep reading that as avoiding. In the live reaction, which ended up another 42-minute one, man. I be happy watching these live reactions, though. What's wrong with it? But a 42-minute live reaction, if you want to beat that, you can become a patron for as low. You can become a patron for as low as $1 a month to check out the 42-minute live reaction, all previous live reactions of JJK Modulo, and any future ones. On top of that, you can be a member right here for as low as $3 a month. If you want to support your boy, you get your name at the end of every single video. A whole bunch of other perks. I list them all the time. But that being the case, I read that as avoiding in the live reaction to it. I'm reading it here, but it is not avoiding. Among all the 10 Shadow Shikigami, Mahoraga is said to be the only one impossible to tame. No sorcerer in history has ever succeeded, with the exception of Ryomen Sukuna, incarnated as Megami Fushiguro. I wish we could have seen that. If there's going to be anime filler, which there kinda has to be. If you think about the culling games in the Shinjuku Showdown, if they just did it, if they did not expand that at all, there's no way that can be 2 more seasons. Like, it's a lot of, like, think of the entire Sendai colony fight. That is at most 2 episodes. Like every episode comes out like 2 episodes each. Like, the Zen Clan Massacre is probably gonna get 1 episode, maybe 1.5. And then, like, I don't know, because I heard the trailer for season 3 come out. I think I've seen pieces of it. I've seen it in edits. I haven't actually watched the trailer itself. But, like, I know perfect preparation still needs a thing, and then the Zen Clan Massacre still needs a thing. But, like, each culling games fight, once you break it down to brass tacks, is like 2 episodes each. At max for some of them. Like, realistically, you could get some of them done in 1 episode. If you were really stretching it, though. But, like, Megami's fight in Tokyo 1, that definitely could be, like, a 2 episode thing. The UG fight against Higuruma, that could easily be, like, an episode. Maybe episode and a half. The Sendai colony fight, that could, like, it really depends on how much they add, though. But I think they're going to be adding a whole lot. And one thing I hope they do add in the anime is seeing Sukuna tame Mahoraga. Because I want to know how he did it. Like, obviously, there are a bunch of different ways I've seen people say you could use the 10 Shadows to do it. One of the most famous ones I've heard is, like, just having Piercing Bull run around in a circle, or if not run around in a circle, just have it, like, run forever. Like straight, just put it on a crash course through the planet, right? Or, like just across the planet. And then, at the right second, summon Mahoraga and just hope that Piercing Bull builds up enough ow. I hit my hand on the desk. But hope the Piercing Bull builds up enough force that when it bursts through Mahoraga, it bursts through him. Or then, like, I've heard, like, one universal idea where you just have, you tame all of the 9 Shikigami, and then you have each of them attack at the same time, and then you, as the 10 Shadows user, just release a massive burst of cursed energy, right? Like, we know it's difficult on whether or not, like, all sorcerers can do this. The only sorcerers we've seen just explicitly release cursed energy out are Gojo, Yuta, Ryu, and I think that's it. I don't even think Sukuna himself has done it, but hypothetically, if a sorcerer could do that while Maharaga's in pieces still in the middle of an adaptation, if a sorcerer expends all their cursed energy all at once, like a massive AoE beam, we know they can do that for defense, hypothetically they can do that offensively, then they could possibly destroy Mahoraga. There are a couple ways that it could have been tamed, but never has been. But I would love to see how Sukuna did it. Because presumably, he could, like, if I had to hazard a guess, he probably cheated. You may be like, I don't know, did he cheat? Does summoning Mahoraga count as using the 10 Shadows technique? The summoning for the ritual, I mean. Because technically, Sukuna at that time had 2 curse techniques. What I assume he did, he may have granted Shrine to his domain, then summoned Mahoraga, and then just had Mahoraga get wiped by Malevolent Shrine before it could adapt to anything. And worst comes to worst, he closes it down and then Fuga. If he can use 2 curse techniques at the same time while the domain is still active, he could have just used, like, Malevolent Shrine plus close range Tiny Fuga without even waiting for the build to happen, and then just atomize Mahoraga that way. So, like, it could just be that, but I want to see that. I want to see the anime's interpretation. Gege, we know, works with the anime staff, so, like, hopefully we can get some of that. I would love to see Morning Tiger actually have a design. I'd love to see, like, all the, like, I don't know, I want to see that. But that aside, Sukuna is the only one to do it. We don't know how. Presumably it's through some dual technique usage. As powerful as Sukuna is, I don't think he just punched Mahoraga into submission. I think it's literally involved. Like, I don't think... It's why I think Mahoraga is a really bad matchup in universe for characters like Yuji. Even by EOS, because he just doesn't have, like, the big, large-scale attack required to one Oko Mahoraga. Same thing for Hikari. Same thing for, arguably, like, if Yuta didn't have Jacob's Ladder, it'd be the same thing for Yuta. Because He, like, even sky manipulation wouldn't be big enough. The love beam wouldn't be big enough. Remember, it only took off Geto's arm. But then again, that clashed with the Uzumaki. So maybe you could argue, like, the anime love beam wouldn't be big enough. But his regular output wouldn't be big enough. Maki, no Wincon. Toji only has a Wincon through Inverted Sphere of Heaven. Gojo and Sukuna obviously have their massive, large AoE attacks. Like, that's it. Like, very few characters can take out Mahoraga because of the caliber of its regeneration, which only gets reinforced in this chapter. And the same issue is what a 10 Shadows user will run into, where innately they don't really have anything that's like big, boom, explosive, wipe everything out in one shot. But with it being the case, we see it can only be manifested in a jutsu battle through an exorcism ritual by dragging the target into the ritual itself. The participants in this exorcism ritual are Yuka Okotsu and Dabura Karaba. And this is interesting. Note, this is actually different. I'll say why it's different in a second. Yuka Okotsu and Dabura Karaba. Hold on. Wait, I clicked on the wrong thing? No, I'm gonna go here. Yuka Okotsu is already in a state of suspended death. Only Dabura Karaba's death, or the destruction of Mahoraga, will end the ritual. Yuka Okotsu will die as well. So, a couple things. Number one, Yuka is presumably already in a suspended state of death by two factors. The first factor, her illness, right? She was like already going blind and was barely able to recognize Mino, and like wasn't able to, thought that was Tsurugi. But on top of that, she is still just in the shadows. And while that did allow her to defend from Mahoraga, remember, not even Megami, who was a healthy, well-adjusted teenager at that point with no brain-destroying illness, he was still on a time limit on how long he can stay in the shadows. Because you still need to breathe, but you can't breathe in there. Oxygen doesn't exist in there. That's why Reggie thought he was just going to flat out drown the second he was put in there. He's like, there's no depth. There's nothing. Like, there's nothing to grab onto. I'm literally just going to die and suffocate. So Yuka probably died just by staying in there for too long and to her illness. But she's in a suspended state of death in the shadows. She's essentially in a void state. But the main issue with this, I thought, maybe if Dobra beats Mahoraga, it doesn't necessarily matter. But the reason it does matter, the reason that the death clause of Mahoraga didn't kick in when Sukuna defeated it back in Shibuya is specifically because he was a third party. So, the only way to hypothetically get around Yuka Okotsu's death, because there are multiple other things here. The main thing that I'm going to go into and why I think we're going to need like a Yuji third party. And you may like, didn't you just say Yuji probably wouldn't win? Yeah, EOS Yuji, but who knows what 80 years of training Yuji will have, or 68 years of training. But the reason I think we need a Yuji third party is because that's the way that the whole death thing was avoided, right? Haruta and Megami were the ones included in Maharaga's exorcism ritual. So if Haruta had died, then Megami would have died, and then boom, bada bing. Or even if Haruta had managed to destroy Megami, Megami presumably still would have died because he had taken the damage from Mahoraga. He was in a suspended state of death, but the suspension is over once Mahoraga is destroyed, dies immediately, right? Sukuna got to get around that by one, appearing, saving Haruta, and then healing Megami. So he was in a suspended state of death, but he was also just fully healed. So when the ritual was negated by Sukuna third partying and destroying Mahoraga, everything was voided. Right now, Dobra destroying Mahoraga. If he were to, in this chapter, just raise his hand and one-shot Mahoraga right now, Yuka would still die because she's already in a suspended state of death. They would need a third party to void everything, and then they would also probably need to somehow get her out of there. Out of the shadows. That's the other main issue. Where even if Yuji were to show up in third party to like properly void the ritual, or I suppose like improperly void the ritual by third party destroying Mahoraga, and then Dabura and Yuka are just fine from that because he's not part of the ritual, that would negate everything. Someone needs to heal Yuka, or like get her out and like perform CPR on her for her to even be alive. So she's presumably like asphyxiated by now. So that is the one way I could see Yuji coming in, because the one thing about this being a short run series and the nature of this chapter in particular, I have no idea what Yuji and Mahito's roles are going to be. Like, the series could be ending in as short as 5 chapters. We may have like less than 100 pages left. Why? Because it's a short run series. Like, we may only get like 3 volumes. So we're getting pretty close to that 3 volume mark, man. So for Yuji and Mahito to play any role at all, they kind of have to appear now. Like now. And the only way I could see that happening is if we get a Yuji third party. Mahito, though, I'm still very confused on what his role is going to be. Like, maybe he just shows up to fight Yuji, but still, man, hope you don't get fried. But, all that being the case, I'm very interested in the 6's battle. Mainly because I'm not sure if Gege has the gall. And you may be like, really? Thunder Man? Gege Hotami doesn't have the gall? Do you see how many characters he slaughtered? Yes! But none of the youth, and very specifically none of the main trio. Obviously, we don't really have a main trio right now. We have the main 4, like a core 4, or like I guess you would just call him a core 4 instead of like a main trio. We have a core 4, and obviously Cross is on his deathbed, but we do have a confirmation in this chapter, at least loosely, that Cross is still alive. He's just struggling for his life right now with 2 massive gaping holes in him. and Yuka is in a suspended state of death. I'm not sure if Gege is going to commit to the bit fully and off Yuka. I feel like that'd be kind of crazy. I mean, I would put it past him, but at the same time, I'm not too sure about that. But all that aside, all the conditions aside, we see something intriguing. As English, brain, English, and slow down. Just as last chapter ended, we see the wheel spin, and we see Mahoraga specifically clench and bite down on the light constructs inside of it and fully heal from it. And we see that this adaptation seems to be multi-layered, right? Because the second this happens, the wheel spins, Mahoraga heals and bites down the light constructs. Dobra, who's standing on the light constructs that have had Mahoraga literally pinned to the... Look at Mahoraga, bro, he's literally speared. They all shatter, seemingly breaking down. This could just be a foundational thing, like, the foundation broke and thus, like, the rest of the construct fell. But even some of these pieces, which wouldn't have cracked for any reason unless Mahoraga adapted and showed, like, a defensive adaptation, they break too. And they all begin to fall. However, there is one thing I want to note, and this is something I want y'all opinions on too. Do you think Dobra can fly? Because I low-key think he can fly. Despite him standing up here, which implied that he couldn't fly. No, he doesn't fall here. There's, like, not even a single motion line that implies that he's going downward, even though his constructs are falling beneath him. He does seem shocked, though. He has a double exclamation point. But we see a certain something rushing up to him, presumably running up a building in order to get to him. And we see Dobra turn. And this is what I do like the third eye, very specifically following the motions of what's going on around it. Occasionally, the third eye just doesn't do that. And actually, I didn't realize that. I just know. That's weird. Maybe that's an art error? No, I think that's just legit. These are still... That's actually kind of nasty. Oh, ew. Now that I've noticed that, I'm not going to be able to unsee it. Oh. His eye isn't just this slit right here. It's just usually centered there. These two... I thought this was just like a different colored marking of his. I thought he just had a white marking. No. His eye... Like, okay, so for example... Let me do this. His eye... that's nasty. It's nasty. Could probably have a weird dream about that. His eye is like slit here. Like his third eye specifically. Obviously his normal eyes are just normal. But his third eye is like, it has a slit here and a slit here. Like he has the underneath eyes. Because you can see that when all three of his eyes turn to react, which I do think is cool. I do like when all the eyes move in sync. It's a very neat detail. But you can see his pupil is like here in the white slit. I thought these were like, I thought there was like an extra white mark or like an eyelid, like just a fold. Nope, that's just open, exposed skin. Oh, it's kind of nasty. But he turns in this way, and you see him preemptively raise up his arms. Why does he raise up his arms? Because he immediately needs to block Mahoraga, who presumably jumped or ran into the sky and slams down on him. But you can note, the reason I'm once again kind of convinced that Dobra can fly is that even though Mahoraga with his big behind self, look at how jacked and juicy that man is. And remember, Dobra is a titan. Like that man's at least a smooth 6-something. 6-something. It's like a 6'6" or a 6'9" or something like that. Like he's massive. Yet he himself is only like a Mahoraga arm big. So Mahoraga is genuinely gargantuan here. But Dobra not only no-sells, he double blocks the double hammer overhead. But note how he doesn't go down. Remember, he's still in midair, right? He hasn't fallen to the ground here. He's not on the ground, but he blocks, and he doesn't go anywhere. Which he could probably only do if he could fly, right? And notably, you see that Mahoraga seemingly even has some air stall here. Very much on like some Smash character type beat, where he does the double summon Mahoraga, or Mahoraga does the double summon Dobra, but you see it doesn't send Dobra anywhere. He just blocks it, no-sells it. And then Dobra switches the block in time. This is really cool. So essentially, Mahoraga goes for the double overhead. Dobra responds like this. But then, Mahoraga, seeing the double overhead didn't do anything, goes in for a kick, like a straight, quality, open, you can see he put the torque into his hips and kicks, but then Dobra simply transitions the guard from up here to down here, blocks the kick, and then gets sent flying. At first, I thought Mahoraga possibly did damage to Dobra here, just because like the black debris that comes off, but I'm assuming this may be either Mahoraga itself, maybe some of the clothing, or just like slight impact marks, because Dobra doesn't seem to have taken any damage from Mahoraga this entire chapter. Light spoiler, he doesn't do anything in terms of damage, but notably, once again, they are in midair as they're doing this. You can see that Dobra's feet aren't on the ground, but he was able to block the overhead and not go anywhere. So, unless Dobra has some super Looney Tunes physics, that man can just fly, and we'll get more possible evidence for this later. as we see Dobra get sent flying away, but in a distinct difference from Sukuna when he was hit by Mahoraga. Very specifically when he was at 15 fingers, so it wasn't a full power Sukuna or anything, but remember Yuji Kuna. Yuji Kuna had a very similar interaction, except he did handle it a little bit differently. The interaction came when Mahoraga swung down, notably with one arm, and then Sukuna responded with one arm. He blocked, boom, it gets sent down, he was pressed into the ground. Notably, Dobra is in midair, he doesn't get budged at all from where he is, but he does get sent flying by the kick. But if you remember, the same hit that Mahoraga hit Sukuna with, Sukuna did have to like dramatically block like this. Like he threw his arm up like this, he was hit here, and then he was sent flying through multiple buildings. Or not, if not multiple, he was sent flying through buildings, even in the manga. Of course, the anime has like 50 million different layers of that. But like even in the manga, Sukuna gets sent flying through a whole building. Meanwhile, Dobra, while he gets sent flying, immediately like, and I love this, he like claws into a building to regain his stability and completely neutralizes all the force that Mahoraga sent him flying with. And in particular, the reason I say it looks like Dobra didn't take any damage is look at his arm here. There's not even a single blood mark, and there's no RCT steam either. So it seems like he just ate that. That double hit from Mahoraga did nothing. The double overhead into the kick did nothing. And Dobra is perfectly fine here. But you can see he is somewhat locking in from the look on his face as Mahoraga chases him down here. Now, admittedly, I'm not entirely sure how this one's working. They may be like I'm not sure if this is meant to be Mahoraga running on air because of the angle that ends up happening here. Because you'll see that Mahoraga seems to be like running on the ground or like maybe mid-leap, but then Dobra turns, presumably hands still in the building. This is why I'm like hot debating and I'm asking y'all, you think Dobra can fly? Because he has his hand buried in the building. He then turns, opens his palm, and then loads up a light blast. And we see Mahoraga big cheesing, looking up like, yeah, what you about to do to me, big dog? What you about to do to me, big dog? What you about to do to me, big dog? And boom. But note how they're in midair. So I think this is meant to imply, like, unless, like, especially considering the blast comes out horizontally through another building, I think Mahoraga is either straight running on air, like maybe that's an adaptation he developed, or like, I don't know, like maybe we're looking at the building sideways. Like I'm not sure how this works, but Mahoraga does run up and get flashbanged quite literally here when Dobra blows a massive beam. However, you can see that Dobra is making one fundamental mistake that is quickly costing him hypothetical limited turns, because you can see Mahoraga gets the first spin here, recovers from the hard light construct light spearing, and then pushes Dobra into the building. Dobra then, instead of using hard light construct, moves to a beam light construct. So you may be like, what's the difference? Think of it like the key weapons in Dragon Ball, which are technically like keyblades, not in the that sense, but like keyblades in the sense of like Goku Black and those solid weapons and Zamasu and what are the other canon characters that use like just straight key weapons? Like you can technically say the destructive disc, but I feel like that's kind of, well, yeah, I guess the destructive disc is technically a key weapon rather than like a regular beam. But that's the thing, right? Dobra is very Dragon Ball character-esque here, where he has the base key, like he has the base weapon type, like he makes these solid hard light construct rods, but he does also have access to straight light beams of like just pure raw energy. And we see this does blow a massive chunk in Mahoraga. And in fact, we even get to see what looks like possible Mahoraga Orions. I didn't know he had those, but he does burst with blood. But the issue is he whiffed. I'm not exactly sure where Dobra or like where Mahoraga was hit. Like obviously he was hit on his side, but like where is he in this panel? This is why I'm like a little bit of the angling of where certain characters are is a little bit weird. Like, is this Mahoraga running? This may be Mahoraga running up the side of another building and then being blasted into this one, right? Because this seems to be the same building. Like it looks like Mahoraga was blasted through this building right here. So maybe Maharaga's like running up another building. We just don't get detailed here. As Dobra's being slid into another building. Which implies that like Dobra's being knocked upwards? Or like at least, like it doesn't look like he's being knocked parallel. Because these windows don't look like they're parallel. But Mahoraga gets blasted. But he doesn't get vaporized entirely. Though clearly he could have been. If this attack had been better centered or a bit bigger, this would have ended the battle right here. Mahoraga wouldn't have lost an arm and a chunk of his torso. He would have lost everything. Now, this is very, very interesting, once again, because we have 15-finger Yuji Kuna as a reference. If you'll remember, the very first time the wheel spun, even though it was Wild Raga, the very first time the wheel spun, the second attack that Sukuna sent that was a dismantle, boom! Mahoraga immediately had an adaptation to knocked it away. This time, though, Mahoraga was not able to react. Now, at first, I was going to be like, did Mahoraga's adaptation get worse? But then I realized something. Each attack that Dobra uses in this chapter is different. So even though Mahoraga is, quote-unquote, adapted to light, seemingly Mahoraga, after this first wheel spin, is only adapted to the hard light constructs that Dobra can produce, which explains why he still does take this massive damage from a light beam, even though he's supposedly adapted to light. But the reason I say Dobra made the mistake, as we know, unless you vaporize all Mahoraga, it will just keep coming back. So he only blew out its side in its arm. It is now adapted to the massive beams that he fires. It's one of the main issues that Ryu would have, right? Where I'd say, well, maybe Ryu with his larger scale Granite Blast could consume all of Mahoraga in one hit, but if he whiffs even a little bit of Mahoraga, then clearly Mahoraga will just be fine and come back. And we see the wheel katunk. It spins again, and Mahoraga is fully restored once more. So a second adaptation. Now presumably he is adapted to these large-scale, widespread light beams. And we see Dobra, in response to Mahoraga's continued survival after the wheel spins, grab a massive chunk of building and pitch it straight at Mahoraga. Where he got the chunk of building from, presumably it was the building he was dug into, because it looks like... Actually, no, because he uses the same hand that he fired the beam with to throw the building chunk with, which does imply that Dobra is, in fact, right-handed, just based on how he's using his attacks with his right, and then he throws the building chunk with the right. But this is a very, very similar feat to how Yuji also threw a chunk of building. However, you can definitely see that Dobra is meant to be portrayed above Yuji here in terms of just, like, how he's fighting, because where Yuji, like, it took... Even when he was awakened freshly against Sukuna, it took like him grabbing like with both hands and running and then chucking it. Meanwhile, for Dobra, it's a simple one-handed effort. He like sliced the building apart, grabbed a piece of it, and just threw it with ease at Mahoraga. And once again, it looks like he's flying. Furthermore, it looks like he's flying. Like, doesn't he seem like he's flying here? He's not standing on anything. He's not standing on any light contracts. I think Dobra can just fly. Maybe it's like a weird bootleg version of flying, like he's like standing on photons or whatever. But I think this man can just flat out fly, which does put him already above so many other characters in his own verse, even in the original series. Hakari now can't beat this man. A character like Yuji, at least EOS, could not beat this man. A character like Yuta would struggle to beat this man if flying is not tied to his curse technique, because even Jacob's Ladder, he could just run away and fight Rika for as long as Yuta has the 5-minute timer, and then he's good. Any characters like... Any non-flyers, essentially, which is a lot of the original series, have, like, no answer to Dobra just flying out of range and light spamming them. Especially since they aren't Mahoraga, the light spam will just eventually wear them down, even if you think they're bulky enough to tank it. But we see Mahoraga actually manage to catch the building in hand, and we see it start to flex. And I love this detail in particular, because it goes to show that Mahoraga is being forced to show effort. And of course, we see it show effort a lot in Sukuna and Gojo, but to see it immediately have to, like, start bulging its musculature. You see the difference in its focused arms here, and then it's throbbing, pulsing, meaty, beefy arms, just straight, and then it shatters the building piece that it was hit with. So the building doesn't do too much damage, and obviously since it didn't do any damage, Mahoraga doesn't adapt to it. But speaking of gains, look at Mahoraga's biceps compared to Maru. Why is he so beefy? I mean, obviously he's meant to be beefy, but we see he crack, shatters the building, and then Dobra is left there to look on. And then, seemingly enough, he lands, which is why I'm still debating on whether or not he can fly, because why would he land here? He's clearly in midair, but then he lands? I don't know, unless he's meant to be, like, on the ground here, but, you know, Yu Yu Hakusho Sensei just didn't draw it? I don't know. But we see that Dobra has begun the analysis, essentially. He's like, she summoned a spiritual being. Given the matter of cursed spirits, this type of spiritual being must be a part of Earth's unique cursed energy system. It's not just some indestructible doll made to fight in place of a Jujutsu sorcerer. It has some kind of ability. And this I do like. Once again, we get to have the best of both worlds, where it's like dramatic irony, right? We as readers know exactly how Mahoraga works. And it's why, at least, I'm very paranoid about the fact that Mahoraga's already gotten 2 spins down. Because if you remember, it took 4 spins to fully adapt to Infinity. But of course, Infinity is a way more complex of a concept and paradox than Light is. So the fact that Mahoraga's already spun once, and he will go through the chapter possibly spinning 4 times, is really, really bad for Dobra as he's adapting to a light attack after light attack after light attack. But while we know how Mahoraga's adaptation works, and we know the more exposure it gets to a phenomena, the faster and faster and faster its analysis will go and go and go, and its analysis never ends on top of that. Dobra doesn't know that. He has no context with the Ten Shadows technique, and this is what? His second interaction with an Earthling Curse technique? First one was Usami, which didn't work against him at all, and now Mahoraga here, who, so far at least, is not working. But we see, after Mahoraga shatters the building, They both land. And I love this detail here. They land and get back into motion so quickly that the debris from the building that Mahoraga shatters doesn't even get to land. They both immediately get right back into it. And we are sticking once again with the idea that Mahoraga can just change size. Like look at this Mahoraga here, and then look at this Mahoraga. These are not the same size of beings. But I do think this does go into like Maharaga's adaptation factor. Maybe it figured, okay, being too big is not good enough. It just makes us a larger target for him. Let me shrink back down. I don't want to say Genge's art inconsistency, because the anime does this too. Mahoraga is consistently fluctuating in size in the anime. And even in the original manga, he's always fluctuating in size. Sometimes he's like 5 megames big. Sometimes he's like maybe 2 megames big. It really depends on how he's being drawn chapter after chapter. But considering how consistent heights and sizes and shapes usually are in JJK, I'm going to assume this is just part of Maharaga's adaptation process, where it's consistently changing size in order to better accommodate a battle with Dobra. And he is still, massively taller than Dobra. He's like head and shoulders above him. But we see both of them immediately going for the blitz. And unfortunately, Mahoraga has yet to develop a proper reactive counter defense. If you'll note, despite having 2 whole spins, Mahoraga just keeps getting light beamed. Over and over and over again. And while I said Dobra uses different attacks, for all intents and purposes, this looks like the same kind of light beam. You could argue, though, it may be a mix of the concussive light pillars that we saw Dobra use before, and just the raw light energy he fired, because they both immediately go up the side of a building. And I want to point out once again that Dobra seems to be flying here, as his feet are not touching the ground, and unlike Mahoraga, he doesn't have the effects of running across the building that Mahoraga does, as we see him circle around Dobra. But Dobra lifts a hand up. Now this maybe he's ambidextrous though, because he lifts his left hand up, sends it out, and then we see multiple, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 separate light beams appear on Mahoraga's face alone, and then they absolutely violate and chunk him by bursting through him. Which, once again, is just a little bit weird. 2 spins deep, Mahoraga's already pretty well adapted to whatever he's interacting with. But in this case, he still doesn't seem to have a solid answer for the light, and he's also not reacting to it. Which, admittedly, I don't like that. Well, it's fine. It makes sense, because, Dobra is clearly tears above. But Mahoraga, I need you to turn to a mirror. I need you to do so. I need you to react, bro. I need you to react. But Mahoraga cannot react right now. It's getting absolutely pieced up, annihilated, blown apart. Whatever word you want to use, it's currently happening to it. You literally see the wheel fall down as the base body gets destroyed. However, of course, while the wheel falls down, it doesn't break or anything. Dobra's going to need a lot more power than that. Possibly the power to erase the world itself. As we see, Mahoraga gets destroyed, only for the wheel to hit a 3rd spin and Mahoraga to be back just fine, even after having its torso blown out. But what I love about this is that, hold on, time to hurt my back. It's literally, you alright? If I break my back, don't get mad at me. But what I love about this interaction, and this is what I'm talking about, I miss that good, juicy, meaty Gege choreography. You see that it is a mix of the raw light beam and concussive force because of what happens. Dobra raises the hand up, fires the multiple light orbs. The light orbs hit Mahoraga, who was hunched forward. He was like this, but then the sheer force of the light beams send Mahoraga back. And then, to combo off of the knockback, even though Mahoraga is planted on the side of the building that they're standing on, Dobra lunges in feet first after Mahoraga. Like, he literally, this is the reason it's so cool to me, literally mid-regen, or like the very second the regen ends, the wheel spins and Dobra immediately blitzes straight into Mahoraga's face, grips him up by the wings, and then plants his feet, like, he puts his feet straight in Mahoraga's face, and then loads up a light beam with curled toes and all. That's some devious motion, bro. Devious motion. That is crazy and unbelievably disrespectful, dog. Why are you putting your feet on his face? But we see Dobra pulls up, gets in close, and with this very, very locked in look here, with a mostly blacked out face with 2 focused eyes, the 1 third eye and the 1 right eye, he lunges in and bursts Mahoraga. Now, once again, I'm not sure if we skipped a little bit here, because we see Mahoraga's wings get annihilated, implying that it got blown apart again, even after a 3rd spin. Mahoraga, please fight back. What are these adaptations even doing for you, dog? But we see he does the feet thing, which looks like just a feet version, like the feet Kamehameha, and this is just a regular Kamehameha, kind of, sort of. We see he does the feet thing with both feet. It blows Mahoraga apart, but I'm not sure if it is that big AoE beam because of this panel right here, which is what it looks like. But then we have this entire section here where Dobra essentially does a Like, not a cheese grater. What is that thing? He does like a light show essentially and slices all the buildings apart. I'm not sure if this is like the feat version of his technique just expanded, or if this is him just doing stuff for the sake of doing it. He literally produces so much light, he causes an aurora, presumably under the veil that is the Shinjuku barrier, right? Like, look at that. He literally just creates an entire aurora by himself and absolutely annihilates the entire building. All the buildings. No domain expansion needed. Just straight raw power. And I still think he's holding back. He has not sweat once. And we see that Dobra begins to analyze and realize something the more and more he keeps fighting. Very similar to what Sukuna realized, though admittedly Sukuna was a lot more careful and let's figure it out quicker. And also, Sukuna just seems to be smarter. Because Dobra says, or thinks, is it adjusting to my curse technique? One little minor itty bitty complaint I have. I wish we got to learn what the Diskunte called curse techniques. Like, obviously, I get it in the moment you want to keep with the pacing of the chapter, so we aren't going to introduce new terminology. But considering most people who read JJK would know, and even you re-explaining this chapter, I wish we got to know what they called it, because curse techniques are just an earthling term. Just like Ryu Loka is what they call cursed energy, and that may just be what Rumelians call cursed energy. It would have been really neat to see what Dobra's people, the Deskunte, called cursed techniques. But of course we don't get that. But he notices that it does seem to be getting better at dealing with it. How much better, I can't really tell, considering he's still tearing it apart, but he notices and says, its wheel keeps rotating, then it immediately recovers afterward. And what I like about this is that that's the end of this part of the chapter. We see Dobra question it. We see him understand what's happening, but we don't actually get to see what happens here as Mahoraga comes back again, just fine, even after having its head blown out and all these buildings destroyed. As the narrator reminds us, the Zenin clan's cherished family treasure, Divergent Sila Divine General Mahoraga, has the ability to adapt to any and all phenomena. The ultimate counterattack. Now, with him presumably being 4 spins deep here, right? Because with the wings being blown off, he must have hit 4 spins. I do hope we get to see Mahoraga have some adaptation of light. I'll be reacts at least a little bit, because this is kind of crazy that he hasn't reacted at all so far, and it's kind of just been getting bullied. So I hope Dobra is actually given some sort of fight. Because while it's clear that the smile has been mostly wiped off of Mahoraga's face, now he's just gritting his teeth like, oh, I'm gonna know one of these strongest characters. Why does this keep happening to me? Why am I getting Mama? Why do you keep doing this to me? In contrast, Dobra is still just like, whatever. He's not necessarily still fully engaged yet. Unfortunately, Mahoraga is not clearing his skies just yet. So hopefully Uyui was correct in that he'll feel a little, his own loneliness will be eased a little bit once Mahoraga has actually developed some sort of counter, or at least a way to interact with the light beams as just, getting vaporized. But of course, if that's only half the chapter, what's happening in the other half of the chapter? Oh, let me show you. Boom! Immediately, we are getting right back into the battle that was set up 2 chapters ago at the end of chapter 14, Tsurugi versus Maru. And we see that Maru is actually in possession of just a teeny tiniest bit of motion, if you will. As Tsurugi says, didn't know you could use a sword. And Maru explains, this is crosses. So, look at this interaction here. Maru wielding the blade in seemingly enough one hand, yet reinforcing with his other, goes in, slams onto Tsurugi. But Tsurugi, who will go on to be proven just the superior swordsman in this battle, perfectly reacts and blocks in in a really cool way. Like, let's see. Tsurugi is left-handed, I want to say, because he has the blade here. But look how he reinforces the block. He doesn't just... In fact, he holds it like this. He doesn't just block with this. He reinforces the block with his hand behind the sword and eats that. And we see that he doesn't even stop there, as he immediately flips the position, right? So he blocks with his sword back here like this. Then he flips it over and immediately, notably, I even did that flip wrong. He essentially does this. He's blocking, reinforced. He then takes his right arm, which is supporting his left on the block, flips the blade around, does this, slides, literally, I'm missing a step. He slides his hand down to reinforce, get a good grip on his katana, and swing through, lighting the blades up as they clash. Very, very cool way to show Tsurugi's prowess with the blade. And also a very cool way to show how this Maru is still at least paying respect to Cross by wielding the same blade that ultimately got him blicked down for, having a weapon at all while being another species. Oh, I wonder where I've heard this story before. Or not even, that's the thing, we aren't even on the species, bro. The amount of times and sad stories you hear of, oh, well, I feared for my life. Dog, they had a box cutter. Dog, they had, like, a toy. They were a child. Like, there's so many things. Oh, but they're dangerous. Just say what you are, bro. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't lie. You were scared of a child, but you weren't actually scared. You just wanted them to go on. And that is ultimately somewhat this. No, like literally exactly the same case of what Yakimaru did when he blicked down Cross. But we see that Maru seemingly may not be a sword wielder as he wields Cross's sword, not his own. However, he is able to summon people with Tsurugi, but Tsurugi clearly has the advantage. As he does do the flip, he drags his sword down, his crystal down Maru's sword, and goes in for a swing. But then Maru, quick enough, this is like, I wish I had someone else here I could do this. But after he does the block into a swing down, Maru throws the blade up. He essentially doesn't allow Tsurugi to finish off the attack by throwing the blade up, knocking his katana off course. Then he goes down in the back, reversals, and then I want to point out, he pulls a Ventus. Bro really pulls a Ventus, hits the reverse grip, and goes in for an underswing. But and notably, he does this after reversing around behind Tsurugi, right? So he does this, goes around Tsurugi after swinging his blade up, goes in for the low, back. This is why I talk about Gang's choreography, though. Back and swings, goes in for the low on Tsurugi to presumably slice his ankles open and then, make him unable to walk. But Tsurugi's shoes have like steel padding on them, so he lifts his heel in order to block the blade and then instantly hits the reversal on Maru, except not like a reversal around Maru himself, hits the 180 on Maru and then swings and knocks Maru off. But Maru is able to switch back to a traditional grip and block in time. This is what I'm talking about. When King gets their choreography back, they're going band for band with Suzuki Sensei. It's not even like it is not even close. It's like it's those two fighting for like, hey, who's got the better choreography between us? Then everyone else is just watching like, well, darn, those two young bucks going crazy, ain't it? And they going crazy. But we see that Tsurugi does knock Maru back, and Maru begins to kind of understand the scenario that he's in now, as he goes into an internal monologue and says, "So these are the extraordinary physical abilities given Tsurugi gained due to his heavenly restriction, in exchange for giving up his cursed energy and cursed technique." Now, this is interesting. Well, no. Actually, no, I think this is generally interesting. I was about to say, Tsurugi's interesting. I don't know if he's complete or not. And this chapter only raises more questions than answers. Because we see that Maru does know about Tsurugi's heavenly restriction. But it implies that he may have had a cursed technique and cursed energy before, but then he gave it all up. But it doesn't seem that way. It seems like he was born that way. I don't know. That may just be a translation thing. But the main thing I find interesting is what's coming up next. As we see that Maru says, "Now, I understand. When Yuka first told me about his strength, I'll admit, I had my doubts. But now that we're actually fighting, it makes sense." This, you want to talk about an insane, or, yo, dog. For Brody, imagine this. Imagine yo boxing somebody. Imagine yo boxing somebody. Brody's posted up like this. Not even like the blade is drawn. He's not really in a combative position though. He perception blit straight hook. Like, imagine you are fighting somebody and then they are like 10 feet away from you. You blink and they are right in front of your face with a punch. Tsurugi pulls the same thing but with the sword. He immediately gets up. And this is why I think maybe he's not left-handed. Yeah, Tsurugi may not be left-handed. Yeah, because he's wielding the sword is right here. So he just blocks. Interesting that I guess he like switch. Oh no. I just had it wrong. Yeah, I misinterpreted because this is his left arm here. So he was always right-handed. I'm just dumb. I read that wrong. He is right-handed because he's gripping the blade in his right here, and then he's reinforcing the block. I think the reason I got that confused is because of where the hand is placed and the fact that the hand is open, but he is still gripping the hilt of the katana with his right. And you see here, he's holding it in his right, and he immediately he blitzes, reels back, and then goes in for the swing. And he does actually manage to slice Maru's face here. He does get the... He doesn't complete the blitz fully, but he does get a good chunk of it off. And we get a Q&A. How is this different from physical cursed energy reinforcement? Answer, because he has no cursed energy, his movements cannot be read through the flow of cursed energy. Now this is the thing. No cursed energy? He has none? Zero? Zilch? Can he see curses though? I forget if that's the can he see curses? Because the thing is, Maki couldn't when she had a little bit of cursed energy because she didn't have enough. But Tsurugi can't see that. He's not like, he doesn't need glasses or anything like that unless he's wearing contacts. I don't know, because if he truly has no cursed energy, and this is what he's supposed to be, if he's already supposed to be complete, he looks buns in comparison to Maki and Toji. Of course, he's fighting Maru, who does seem to be like an extremely powerful prodigy. So maybe he is Maki and Toji level, and just then Maru is also that level. But I don't know. It is really difficult to see Tsurugi as that, as Maru is able to react. They only get a minor cut. But he is stated to have no cursed energy. But then that's where the next thing gets in. Not only the question of can he actually see curses, but it's this. This is going to be trouble. Every single attack feels like an ambush until I can adjust to it. And that is an interesting angle of it too, right? Where ultimately sorcerers get so reliant on reading the flow of their opponent's cursed energy that when an opponent has none, but they still have the stats comparable, it would get weird. I like to think of it like, for anyone who's played the New Game Plus on the Batman Arkham games, typically in New Game Plus, since it's a harder version, they'll remove like the counter notifications, like above an enemy's head when they're about to hit you, when you're supposed to hit like the Y button. They remove that entirely. So essentially think of it like that for Maru and anyone who fights like Maki or Toji or Tsurugi. They can still move at those like threatening levels, but you can't read it at all. You need to trust your regular typical senses when in their respective worlds, they're so used to using solely sorcery senses. But obviously that doesn't apply to Tsurugi. The only thing that Maru hypothetically could track is the blade itself, but even still, that would probably be some sort of delay just because, you know, it's completely separate from Tsurugi's body and cursed energy pool since he doesn't have one. But we see that Tsurugi sets up something unique here. After seeing that Maru was able to at least mostly dodge his blitz, he then slides. You can literally see he forces Maru back into this room. He slides, rushes past him, hits the rotation behind this set of what seems like little metal doors, and then swings. He lights his cursed tool, reels back, and swings, lighting a fire of the fence and setting up a flame wall. And ultimately, we see Maru realize, and Tsurugi wields Jujutsu by making use of the cursed energy in his cursed tool. Wait, no. And Tsurugi wields Jujutsu by making use of the cursed energy his cursed tool is imbued with. I thought it was just like an auxiliary tool, since he can't wield cursed energy on his own. But I get it now. I get it. The cursed tools don't run out of cursed energy. Why can't I read? It probably depends on the tool's grade, of course. But still, the way Tsurugi manages the pace of a Jujutsu battle is totally different from any other sorcerer. And this is true, right? I don't really think about it all too much when I mention Maki and Toji in matchups, but like, that is a very important thing. Maki and Toji can't experience burnout. They can't go through any of that. Their weapons, while they can get devoured depending on what weapon that they are, they ultimately brain. Oh, no, they ultimately don't really have... They have a stamina limit, but it's so vague because they can't run out of cursed energy because they don't have any cursed energy. They're not using cursed techniques. So when Maki's running around with SSK in hand, no matter what you do to her, you could put her in a Jacob's Ladder scenario, you could put her in a domain, you could put her anywhere. SSK is always going to SSK because it's just a byproduct of the blade. I once got it confused and like, oh, SSK is like an application of a cursed technique. No, the only cursed tool that I believe is an application of a cursed technique, or quote unquote a living application of a cursed technique, is the Prison Realm, because that was literally made up of a monk's remains with a certain cursed technique. Meanwhile, the Soul Split Katana was just forged. Presumably this blazing sword, which I forget, was just forged. So they just are the way they are. You cannot run them out of cursed energy. And that's what Maru means when he says the pace of a Jujutsu battle is totally different from any other sorcerer with Tsurugi, because Tsurugi can essentially just throw out his attacks over and over and over. He essentially has Limitless plus 6 eyes on steroids because he doesn't actually use anything other than the condition of the blade itself. But we see that ultimately this level of freedom and control isn't enough. Even with this insane piece of the battle, Maru's is somewhat able to keep up. And I do like this. I love this detail. I mentioned earlier how I was a little bit kind of perturbed or freaked out by, you know, Dobra having empty, loose, double-slitted eyes. Like, is that a cultural thing or what? But I didn't really rock with that. It was a little bit freaky to me. But what I do rock with here, yeah, that's just his eye. Oh, that's kind of nasty. But what I do rock with here, in terms of like the eye placement, specifically in this panel, you can kind of see it in previous panels, Maru's lower eyes are focused on the tip of the blade that's coming towards him, while the third eye is looking directly at the person wielding the blade, or in this case, launching it at Maru. There's a disconnect between the Maru who's fighting and the Maru who is paying attention. seemingly enough that he's getting two perspectives at once. But with that being the case, we see that Tsurugi does throw the sword. He just straight, yeah, and then launches that thing. It stabs into the wall. But this is what I'm telling you, this like, hey, he's crazy. He throws the sword. It stabs into the wall. Maru, seeing the blade come towards him, he duck like he. Once again, your boy's unk. I'll admit it. I'm old. Help. Just hope I don't break my back when I do this. But. And this is cool, right? Because it mirrors the earlier interaction where ultimately it is the leaning forward into the lean back. Like, where is it? It's this incident right here where Maharaga's leaning forward, forced to lean back. But unlike Mahoraga, Maru was actually able to react to the attack that was sent by his opponent. Meanwhile, Mahoraga was unable to, and he was forced into this legendary backbend. Meanwhile, Maru was put in the same scenario where he was hunched forward, ready for an attack. You can really see him bent forward, like he's hitting this kind of pose. Like, I got one leg up right now. He's hitting this kind of pose. But then he sees the blade literally being launched at him through the. And this is the cool part. Tsurugi uses the fire and burns the pillars or the gate that he's fighting in front of the fence in order to set the smoke screen to then throw the sword at Maru, who's leaned forward. So Maru needs to stomp his back foot on the ground, his left foot. He needs to stomp that back, lean all the way back. But Tsurugi didn't just throw the sword and then go to punch him in the mouth. He throws the sword, chases after it. The sword gets lodged right above him. He then takes gravity plus his own strength, grabs the blade, and then slams it down on Maru's head. But then Maru is able to, from the low back position, get up and block the It's cinema. It's cinema. It's cinema. It's cinema. It's cinema. It's cinema. I love it. I love the choreography. I love the intensity of it. I love the mix-ups. I love the utilization of abilities here. And I do love the fact that Maki and Toji and Tsurugi are given this, basically not unlimited stamina, but they're allowed to do things that only Gojo and Sukuna could do. Yuta would run out of cursed energy even if he did have unlimited, didn't have a 5-minute timer. That would eventually happen. Hikari can't. But Yuji would eventually run out of cursed energy with spanning blood manipulation and dismantle and / shrine and all that. But Tsurugi, Maki, and Toji, as long as they have enough physical stamina, they can just keep fighting forever and ever because their cursed tools will never run out. And we see that even with Maru being able to keep up somewhat, it's not enough. He was able to react to and block the downward sword swing, but it was more than enough to force him through the building and send him rolling. And now he's laid out on the ground. And we see Tsurugi begin to speak with Maru, blade at hand. Even if it's just Dobra who leaves, that's fine. And here's the thing. This goes back to the idea that I was talking about prior, and a lot of people, there were good discussions in the comments about it. There's hot debate, generally, on whether or not the Samurians are wrong for demanding what they're demanding at this point. I think the main issue, but I've seen other people change their minds, so they thought about it a little bit more. The main issue here is that at first, the Samurians were not told everything. If they were told about cursed spirits from the start, especially after they went out of their way to inform the humans about Kallions, then I think this would have gone a bit differently. But remember, humans at first hid the cursed spirits existed at all. They didn't mention it, even though that they explained a whole lot of Jujutsu. They didn't mention one of the most core fundamental uses for Jujutsu sorcerers and Jujutsu. So they did that. Then they didn't tell them that. Then they started slaughtering them. Then they showed up. They had Cross get shot, unprovoked. Once again, I'm sorry. Touching the sword as you're not looking at anybody is not reason to be suddenly blicked down. So Yakamaru then blicks down Cross and almost causes an international incident. Dobra almost went on a rampage that would have slaughtered 11 people. All of Usame's subordinates and Yakamaru. That didn't happen. So the Samurians held back on that. Dobra held back on that because of his own memories of Dobra. So that happens. He's held back. Then they make a request. Hey, please stop slaughtering cursed spirits. They're kind of like Kallions. Admittedly, they don't discuss it though at first. They're just hey, please don't do that. But due to the cultural differences between the Remelians and Earth, and this is the one thing I'll admit, I underplayed the importance of that. The humans do not know anything about cursed spirits other than the fact that they're evil, mean beings that want to hurt people. So I can't blame them for not wanting to change at all. But they don't even talk with the Remelians about the whole thing. They just go on to not slaughter cursed spirits, only to slaughter cursed spirits en masse anyway, right? Admittedly, for the sake of the Great Purification Ritual, which is, the cultural difference there. Then, the Samurians are hey, we made a request to you. You completely ignored it. We just want Japan. Or not Japan. They don't want the entire nation. They just want Tokyo. Since the cursed spirits are there, since the Kallions, quote unquote, are there, they want that. They didn't get that because they didn't want to give it up. The one thing that I, like, at least a friend of mine who was very much on, like, by humans, for humans, of humans. Not surprising. But, like he was like, no, it's somebody's fault. Why would they get Tokyo? They don't just, one, they, like, he said this crazy. I found it crazy. He said, he's like, they don't deserve it because it's not their land. And I was like, well, first things first, I need you to remember, the current people in Japan are not native to Japan. They're not from that island nation. So that land was conquered in the first place. So if you rather the Sumerians just send Dobra to go conquer Tokyo, you can have them do that if you really want to. But so there's first thing, the whole idea of, oh, it's not your land, you don't belong here. People of Japan ain't even from Japan. That's not how that works. The native Japanese people were slaughtered in mass. So there's that aspect of it. So there's that difference. But on top of that, the main issue that I had with the whole idea of them not giving it up is that even if we were to argue that, oh, it's their land by right because they conquered it thousands of years ago, or I forget how long. The thing I always find hilarious about people from a certain nation that I also happen to live in saying that, oh, this is our land, they have no right to be coming here. Dog, the nation isn't even 250 years old. It's not, like, I don't even think it's 10 generations old. There haven't even been 50 leaders, dog. Haven't even been 50, and the leaders turn over every 4 years, mind you. 4 to 8 years. Of course, there were, like, some extensions before that, before, like, the implementation of the plan. Like, but, like, still. Potato chip. What do you mean they don't? Your people weren't even here. Unless you are a native person of the land I'm currently referencing that I'm kind of scared of. This is like, you weren't from here either. You were an immigrant of some kind too, dog. So like, where's whoa, don't get all like, it's not their land, it's our land by right, dog. It's not your land by right either. You are at most, once again, unless you have some sort of native in your bloodline, which may not even been acquired fairly, quote unquote, or even like consensually in many cases, because people are bad and evil. Then you don't have any claim to the land either, dog. It's not even 250. It'll be 250 next year. Next year, not even right now. But my big point that I explained to my friend, he was like, oh, okay, I kind of see what you mean. Japan doesn't even have Tokyo right now. No one lives there but the cursed spirits. Don't you think it would be a good idea to give that land? Or leave, once again, assuming they could even give it, as if it's not just cursed spirit territory that they're trying to maintain to make sure it doesn't go bad. Don't you think it'd be a good idea to give the whole area to a group of people who can actually communicate and understand those creatures and possibly make them docile? Like, from the little minute interaction we saw between Rumelian and a cursed spirit, which we know isn't a Kallion, but a cursed spirit, the cursed spirit was chill. It was monstrous. It may have been building up to eat them, but I don't know. They can communicate with Rumelians. I'd rather they'd come together and communicate rather than just, send them off. Really considering the whole idea of working together, bonding, and the idea that typically, 9 out of 10 times, shock horror, you bring more diverse people to an area, and the area typically gets better. Mixing cultures and people and developments is typically always a good thing. Look at the current strongest nation on the planet. It is a nation of what? A nation of immigrants that all came together from different places, and that's how it built up all the power over the years. Also helped that, like, the other half of the world literally destroyed itself twice over. But, like, there's that as well. But still, my point is there. And that's the same thing here, right? Where Tsurugi is leaning more towards an idea that maybe, I don't think you should banish Dobra. I think that sucks. You're essentially just banishing him to die. And Maru doesn't really go into this. But he says, Tsurugi, let me just read his line here before I go back into it. Even if it's just Dobra who leaves, that's fine. I doubt the range of a curse technique can extend beyond the planet, just like with his sister's death curse. So if Dobra leaves Earth, then the ritual Yuka staked her life on will become void. But there are a few things wrong with this. Number one, you're like essentially saying, hey, no, we shot one of your representatives after y'all were really cool with us and didn't just use your undeniably powerful living weapon to absolutely annihilate all of us and take over all the land. No, we just shot your brother. But get out of here, or at least get your one bargaining chip out of here so we can subjugate you, or maybe force you into these certain conditions, because we're not gonna let you go anywhere. Already, remember, the Submarines were not allowed to integrate into society at all. They were just meant to stay on the Now-Nox and get supplies every once in a while. So either subjugate them in that sense, but I guess maybe by this implication they'd be allowed to live on the land, but where on the land would they be allowed to live? What little segregated areas? Like, what are you gonna do there? And two, there is the issue of Yuka already being dead. She's died. Now knowing, like maybe, but Tsurugi, since he's not there, that's the whole idea of this conflict, the idea that these two brothers are fighting for people they aren't even there for in the moment. Yuka's in a suspended state of death. She's gone. So even if the ritual becomes void, it's not like she's going to suddenly RCT back to life. If the ritual, and unironically, the ritual needs to keep going on. If the second Dobra wins, then it's over, because she's going to die. Dobra leaving, even if that doesn't trigger Mahoraga's aggro to the moon and back, to be like he doesn't just chase, like Mahoraga doesn't grow back wings and fly into space somehow, or like grow rocket boosters from his feet just to chase Dobra down. Yuka's gonna die anyway. You, like I said, you may need a third party plus some RCT plus someone to res her or something along those lines. So there is that issue there. And the other main thing I saw, because once again, like I said, I will admit I was a little too, I guess weirdly in a way anti-human by saying, well, we should just give it to them since you don't have it anyway, and plus they could actually do something with it, which you can't right now. There is the idea, the possibility that the Rumelians would obey the cursed spirits and then possibly be manipulated into turning their force against the rest of the world. That is indeed a possibility because of their reverence for Calions. Once again, we don't know about that great original Calion, which apparently like names all of them and determines whether or not they're going to be a warrior. We don't know where that one is. Like, presumably it's on the Naudox. We have no clue. But it is a possibility I will admit I did not consider. While it's clear that it's at least from the Calion that, what was his name? Guy with the sides. What was his name? Oh, I'm gonna look it up real quick. The guy was getting licked, right, by the one cursed spirit. It's clear he wasn't he was listening to their voices, but like he wasn't what you gonna call it? Brain. He wasn't like obeying. It wasn't giving him commands or anything. But hold on. JJK, there we go. JJK. Let me look up the guy's name. Samurian, yeah, but I just want to know cross, appearance, personality, history, ability, overview, Roy Loca, curse technique. Alright, it's a stub article. I can't find it. But the guy was getting lit. Alright, he was essentially treating it like a pet, right? Like an animal. That's what it was. So like I think it's still a 50-50. And I at least to me, based on the fact that they were like the Rumelians, while they did have warriors, they were never like seemingly a warrior group of people that would just go out and conquer on the word of Calions. That never seemed to be the case. They just wanted to protect them specifically. I don't think from what we've been given so far that if a cursed spirit like a Mahito were to show up, or a Jogo or a Hanami, one, that those three wouldn't just slaughter Rumelians anyway. They don't care. But two, that they would, like, if that guy as a warrior was told, go slaughter innocent women and children because I am a Calion and you will obey me, I don't think he'd be like, okay, whatever you say, Calion Master Man. I think he'd be like, oh y'all are evil, oh you're all God. Like, I don't know, I would, at least to me, especially because of the conflict that's established, I would risk it. But I now understand more why other people are still more so heavily against the idea of risking it, because them teaming up with a Jogo or a Hanami could be dangerous, and the possibility of them just obeying the cursed spirits because they are mistaking them for Calion, that is still a possibility I did not give enough weight to. So I will give that, I will grant that. But I do think Tsurugi is ultimately wrong, though. I think right now he needs Dobra to keep fighting Mahoraga as much as possible and take as much time as he needs, or someone needs to come and grab Yuka, heal her, and then third party. Like, that's the only real way that Yuka can escape her current death, as she's currently in a suspended state of death. Right? There we go. But with it being the case, we see Maru explain why ultimately even Dobra just leaving can't happen, or at least sending him out would just be either just begging him to die one way or another. As we see Maru explain, Dobra won't ever go back to Samoria. He's involved in the conditions on that curse on his English. He's involved in the conditions of that curse on his sister, too. It's too dangerous for Dobra to go back into the range of the Diskunte Chieftain's curse technique, even if it's just him alone. Now, what I'm assuming here, I'm assuming two things. Number one, I'm assuming the curse technique and its effects were put on Dobra and his sister from a very young age. Or like it's a innate thing that happens when you're born into the Diskunte tribe under the Diskunte Chieftain. Because you would think that he'd be able to avoid it entirely, right? Like, because the death curse is on his sister, not he himself. But it likely is the whole bind. It's probably like a two-step process. Bind and command. So if Dobra were to reappear and the Diskunte Chieftain were to notice him, which presumably he would, he'd be able to say, Dobra, do this, or do not kill me. Like, he would essentially be able to tell Dobra no. And then if he does, possibly it'll be like a sure hit effect in spite of, oh, yeah, I'm going to assume it is like Higuruma's ability. If you remember, the way that deadly sentencing works is that ultimately, no matter how much stronger you are than Higuruma, if you get hit by that sword, my G, you're fried. And I think it's the same thing with the Chieftain's curse technique. Presumably, if Dobra were to even appear in his presence, even though the sister is like 50 million light years away, or however far light years, like his minimum I think is like 4 light years, assuming they're from the closest next solar system. Even assuming they're that far away, if Dobra were to spontaneously disobey a command, then he probably, like his sister would probably just perish, right? Like on the spot. Even though it's that far. You may say, that's insane, it's so much range. It is, but I'm assuming it's like some complex multi-layered thing. I think if it was as easy as Dobra speed blitzing and one-tapping the chieftain, he would have done that. He would have done that. If he could just do that, he would. That's why they need the black rope. Because in that case, it'll probably undo it. The complex conditions that require the curse technique to function, yeah, they probably would be turned off with the black rope, but they're probably always active. That's why I assume the second assumption I'm making is the idea that the chieftain did it to Dobra and his sister when they were very young and they couldn't resist. It probably, like I mentioned, it probably is when you are born into the clan. Like, you know how the Kalyan for the Romelians essentially decide if you're going to be a warrior or not at birth and decide your name. I'm assuming the Deskunte chieftain takes a similar role to that Kalyan, where you are put under the command of his curse technique at birth, so you can't resist it. So even as you are an older, extremely powerful transcendental being like Dobra, even though he's so much more powerful, he likely can't resist it and would just die immediately. Or if not die immediately from disobeying a command, his sister would, if it had hazarded gas. And that's why Dobra would never leave either. And also, just even if you say, okay, sure, don't send Dobra back to Samoria, but load the ship up with a bunch of supplies and send him off. Just get rid of him. Not only would that be getting rid of the Romelians' only bargaining chip with humanity, which they desperately need right now, clearly, but also, that would be sentencing Dobra to death. I mean, like, sure, there may be another planet, but, like, they were as was stated last chapter, or the chapter prior to that, I think, they were lucky enough to find Earth in the first place. It was entirely possible that they would have left out and just died. And at least they had other people. Unless this is implying he would send Dobra and his sister away. And even still, they just have each other, and then they'd eventually starve to death in the vast void of the cosmos. Yeah. And obviously Maru's not going to do that. So, we see that Maru says, oh, I just realized, his markings are drawn here. Ujiwa Saga-sensei, or one of their, Ngege, or one of their assistants, forgot. He looks so barefaced and babyfaced here because his markings are here. Let's see. He says, it'd be different if the curse could be undone with the black rope, but there's no time for that now, right? I mean, like, legally speaking, the unironic, most hilarious thing about the current scenario is they technically put Yuka on an indefinite time period, or time limit. Obviously, the longer the time passes, the more Dobra is going to adapt, so he's going to be harder and harder to restrain. But as we see earlier on in the chapter, even stat-wise, the main issue that Mahoraga is running into is that he can't damage Dobra. He's not using his sword, which is, I'm now noticing, is just very inconsistent on whether or not it's there or not. Like, it's gone here, it's gone back-to-back in these panels, because I think it is on his... Wait, actually, it's on his left hand, right? Is it on his left hand or his right? No, it's on his right. So yeah, sometimes the sword just isn't drawn. So there are some cases where, like, certain details of character designs are being forgotten. But look at this. Dobra is just clearly above Mahoraga in physical stats as well, and also just curse technique proficiency. Just in general, Dobra is a tier above Mahoraga, clearly. So, with Yuka being in a suspended state of death, there's no established time limit on Mahoraga's ritual. So if they were to come to an agreement, and this may be how it ends, literally, if it's not a UG third party, the way they could end this and make this work is Tokyo decides to agree, or no, Japan decides to agree to give up Tokyo or set up some sort of deal there. As long as Dobra leaves, they have Dobra restrain Mahoraga the entire time. They get the black rope. They void the 10 Shadows technique after, I don't know, healing Yuka a little bit to make sure she doesn't die of asphyxiation. And then they turn off the technique on Dobra and his sister. Then Dobra hops to the Now Next, flies back to Samoria, one-taps the Elder before he can reestablish the conditions of the curse technique. And then possibly they work from coexistence from there. But even so, that's very conditional. It's very complicated. It could happen, but I think, once again, the best scenario is the UG third party. But, with it being the case, that's Maru saying, yeah, it's not happening, gang. Dobra's not leaving, we're not leaving, we're here now, we're not going to do this. And naturally, Tsurugi is even seemingly somewhat okay with this. Obviously, he can see and recognize Maru's resolve. And he says, Maru, if I win, leave Earth. Let's have a duel with those conditions. Notably, he doesn't make it a binding vow, and Maru doesn't necessarily agree to it, but for all intents and purposes, this is a binding vow between these two warriors. Or in this case, the warrior and the sorcerer. And we specifically see the idea of warriors and sorcerers being brought up as a basis for this conflict when Tsurugi says, you're a warrior, aren't you? And he activates symbol domain, maculation. Now, I still know he's doing this. Like, can he control cursed energy or can he not? Like, I know he's controlling the cursed energy in the blade pencil, man. Yeah, but like, how? If he has no cursed energy, how's he controlling cursed energy? I don't get it. But once again, I think he is perfect because he doesn't need, unless he has contacts, he can see curses, right? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's been established. I don't know. He's kind of just going with the sauce right now. I don't get it. But Tsurugi is going all out, right? Using symbol domain, setting up, ultimately, he's doing everything in his power to win this duel in order to make it. So once again, it is as if it were a binding vow. And I do like, even if it is somewhat of a little bit of a low blow, I do like that Tsurugi calls to this side of Maru, right? He recognizes that ultimately Maru is holding back on him. And he remembers specifically an interaction that Maru remembers that that was presumably explained when they were giving their backstory. You held back, didn't you? You didn't fight with your full power. It was that idea, right? Where there is a disrespect between two warriors, or in this case, a sorcerer and a warrior, when one is holding back and the other is fighting with all they have. Maru didn't come here to slaughter Tsurugi. He didn't come here to do that at all. He came here to reconcile at most, or at least explain the situation and why they aren't going anywhere. So he's holding back. And that does sort of trigger this side of Maru, this side that's so loyal to the ideas of a warrior. That's what 14 ended on. And we see that this conflict, the complication, the chaos within Maru is strong. As he says, I'm sorry, Dobra. I understand now what it's like to be on the verge of losing your own sibling. But I'm afraid to lose my friends too. And this is something I do want to know. Look at his eyes here. In fact, you can even see with his eyes, except for this point. This is a point where it's like acting separately from him. But you can see in this instant, this is truly Maru. The boy who wants to connect, who wanted to be neighbors, who wanted to be so much more than this, but now understanding that this battle, this chaos has evolved into something much worse. But the very second that part of Maru, honestly, in my opinion, a real, true version of Maru that is a balanced aspect of all of his sides, begins to exist and experience conflict, the very next second later, what the other side of Maru, the Maru that is so consumed, that's what I talked about also in 2.14's review, or in 14's review, the side of Maru that has been indoctrinated by his culture, constrained by it, speaks. I don't want anyone else to get hurt or die. And you call yourself a warrior? Will you really insult Tsurugi like that? Now, I'm not sure how much of this is literal, and I'm not sure how much of this is metaphor. As far as we know, the third eye isn't meant to be like a separate personality or distinct sentience or anything separate from the Zamorian. Sure, it cries at the sight of Callion's dying, for the case of Rebellion specifically, but it doesn't seem to be a unique or secondary consciousness. And obviously, I don't think this is like Cross possessing Maru or anything, because Cross wouldn't say something like this. He doesn't necessarily care too much about being a warrior. That was the whole point of 2 chapters ago as well. Or even, I think, 2 or 3 chapters ago. So I think in the metaphorical sense, if I had to have what this means metaphorically, this is the constraints of culture, the limitations of them, where ultimately Maru has had an evolved and more complex belief based on the connections he's built that is beyond his culture. In this case, the culture of a warrior to give one's all in terms of battle when one's life is on the line, even in scenarios where one doesn't want to. I need to drink some water. But even when one doesn't want to, that side of him, that culture, the chains around Maru's neck that have held him down and made him act in strange, non-Maru-esque ways before, they come to the forefront. They are manifested in the third eye, the uniqueness, the true symbol of his culture outside of his, markings. they come down. We know the third eye is very relevant to Rebellion culture because of how it bleeds and stuff like that, or how it basically is like internal brain damage and it cries at the sight of Kallians, which is another major part of their culture. It's speaking to Maru. It may not be literal. It may not happen. I don't think Tsurugi heard it speak. It doesn't have a mouth or anything, right? Even though it has a text bubble, it's unlikely it can speak. So in the metaphorical sense, it could just be that. And you call yourself a warrior. It's the eye. It's his culture asking, are you really going to deny what role you have to play now? All for the sake of something as petty and worthless as friendship. You're a warrior, Maru. You're a warrior first. And that is what leads Maru to his conclusion here at the end of the chapter. However, if I had to guess like a more literal interpretation of this, it's one of two things. We know that Maru's father was obsessed with half being a warrior, but half just mole, right? Like that resource. He's obsessed with it to the ultimate degree. And because of that, it could be a case where like it's a curse from his father, or like an accidental one, you know. I highly doubt Maru's father intentionally would have cursed him, but like it could be a curse, a lingering after effect. And maybe this is like a literal thing that happens to Maru whenever he begins to stray too far from his warrior pathing, that like kicks in and is like, no, you're going to be a warrior. And that's why I say it could be his father, or it could be the Kallian. Remember, the Kallian decides if you're a warrior at birth or not. It chooses. It gives jurisdiction. It is, once again, which is why I really want to see it, considering it does so much, but like, it does all that. If it were to die, Maru's eyes would presumably burn, like, he'd probably die immediately. Like, if the main Kallian that names them all, that's been around for thousands of years, were to die, I'm assuming all the rebellions would, like, just bleed out from brain damage. But because of that, since it's designated Maru as a warrior, the third eye, it's his direct link to it, could literally be speaking to him, being like, what are you doing? You are a warrior. Act your role out. Be respectful. Do it like once again, it fits still into the metaphor of like your culture controlling you to your detriment in a way. And that is a good thing, right? Because ultimately, it'd be one thing if Gabe was just pushing, oh, you know, the Sumerian culture is perfect and good, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. No, there's still clearly issues, just like there are any, like, I can't think of a singular culture that's just absolutely perfect, because nothing is perfect. But there still are unhealthy issues that Maru has taken through his life that are completely unaddressed. This would unironically be one of them, where his obsession with being a warrior overrides everything else at the end and forces him to be who he isn't. And we see that point get reached here, as Maru says, fine, Tsurugi, I'll fight with the intent of killing you. Try not to die. And we see, instantly, the tide of the battle changes, quite literally, as Tsurugi, who was in his symbol domain, suddenly gets flipped and thrown out of the building they were fighting in, or at least near. And they are sent flying through the air. And Tsurugi's even shocked and sweats and realizes, I may have been up more than I could chew. As he says, we're flipped. And we get a final bit of dialogue for the last chapter. Or here at the end of the chapter. Modulo and Cross's curse techniques are chaos and harmony. So. Yeah, like you can tell, I was already glazing the chapter right from the start. Yes, this is one of my favorite chapters. Yes, I think it's really, really good. And yes, I'm very excited for the next chapter. Like, it's just, Gege dropped a straight banger. Just a straight banger. I've seen, like, some of my friends have mixed opinions on it. They kind of don't like how we've reduced it to combat. But I think the combat feeds so well into all the characters in this chapter, I don't care at all. I actually really, really like it. One of my favorite things is, like, storytelling through combat. And I think this chapter does that fantastically. Obviously, you have Mahoraga versus Dobra as the opener. We get so much context for Yuka and the Ten Shadows technique and the modern state of the narrative. Like I said, I do have to, like, no, I'm not listening in order to save you this characterization in my mind, because why on earth would he ban his own granddaughter from using her technique that she was born with and she had no control over? Why would he do that? Let me rub my head together and think about that. Like, let's just ignore that. But I do like the extra context that we get. It explains the scenario that Yuka was in throughout the narrative. Then, Dobra, flexing. Fantastic. But Dobra very specifically flexing in the way that he does, and seemingly having these moments of, like, if not flat out anger, just clear like a manic focus. You can truly see that he is a warrior, like in the literal definition of the word, not just the Sumerian definition of the word, from how he fights, and very specifically his fighting style, like how simultaneously elegant yet bestial it is, from how he, like, holds his hand out, the way that it's so, like, everything's so oddly detached, but in a beautiful way. And yet he still has these moments of, like, a bestial, vicious nature, grabbing Mahoraga by the wings and blasting him from his feet. Like there's just Dobra's fighting style is fantastic, and it communicates his character very, very well to me. And also seeing him begin to break down and analyze Mahoraga, and not just analyze Mahoraga, but a curse technique system that he barely understands, also fantastic to see. It goes to show that he has brains and brawn. He's a good balance. Mahoraga himself, not necessarily a character, just a living technique, but at the same time, it's cool to see the living technique in action once again. To see him really struggle, like obviously he was struggling against Gojo and Sugata, but seeing him struggle again and see the smile wipe from his face as he slowly but surely realizes that, oh, I'm still not enough. I need to keep going and going and going, and see him get destroyed and come back over and over and over again. Feeding into like his symbolic representation, right? Because obviously, a lot of people look at Mahoraga and are like, how on earth does Mahoraga fit into the Ten Shadows? The Ten Shadows summons animals. How is Mahoraga? Mahoraga is a human, right? Like clearly, Mahoraga is the human of the Ten Shadows. Because don't forget, at the end of the day, while we are very, very special animals, we're just animals. So Mahoraga is the animal. Unless you entirely annihilate the human race, they will keep evolving, keep moving forward, keep coming back, keep developing stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. That's what Mahoraga is. Mahoraga is humanity in many ways, shapes, and or forms. And that's why Dobra is struggling to overcome it, because he's not doing it properly. He's not annihilating all of it. And that's why Mahoraga is going to keep evolving, presumably get much, much stronger next chapter, since I think he's hit 4 spins. He's probably going to finally actually have an answer to the light show that Dobra's putting on. Of course, Dobra still does have his second like untranslatable curse technique, which I think is going to still fry Raga in the end, but I'm very excited to see how that plays out, because I really like both Mahoraga and Dobra as characters, and I think the battle and its scale feeds into the level of power that Dobra, the strongest tier, all have access to. So that's good. Then Tsurugi versus Maru. A fantastic battle between two older brothers doing the best that they can, and very specifically playing into their roles while trying to resist playing into their roles. It's an interesting thing, right? Because obviously they're both fighting for their siblings to many degrees and fighting for the people that they represent. But at the same time, it's clear that Tsurugi still wants connection. As he says, even if it's just Dobra who leaves, that's fine. Of course, it is upon reflection that it is upon Maru's rejection of that he goes back to the if I win, leave Earth, which implies that he's given up on this idea entirely. But you can see that Tsurugi, just like Maru, is conflicted about actually fighting someone he considers a friend. He trusts Maru. He's bonded with Maru. They are homies. So there is this conflict between the two where they're fighting with everything on the line, but they don't actually want to defeat each other. And I do love a good battle like that, a battle between two allies where they stand simply diametrically opposed based on their very natures. Very, very good stuff. Fantastic character writing on that front. I love the idea of culture constraining you, beliefs constraining you. You can once again see that on both sides, but especially highlighted through Maru. And I'm excited to see what chaos and harmony are. Presumably Maru is the chaos, Cross is the harmony. It explains why when Maru's abilities were active prior, everything was going haywire. The balls were being raised, the weight was maxing out, the clock was running forward, because that's chaos. It's non-controllable. Meanwhile, Cross would likely be harmony, because when he showed up and then held his hand out in front of Maru, it calmed him, put him in a state of harmony. They balanced each other out. I'm excited to see that. I'm assuming it works something like that. But with it being the case, let me hit it for the 2 times. A W chapter. If you made all the way to the end of this thicky bicky of a review, please leave harmony and chaos. Just nice and simple. Nice and simple. We're just going to flip it. Leave harmony and chaos in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you do want to have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month, getting exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member to the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the 43-minute live reaction, 42 or 43-minute live reaction to this very chapter, all previous and future live reactions to Modulo and all the other series I review, ad-free variations of all my videos, early ad-free access to all my videos, not just all my videos here on the main channel, but all my videos on the second channel that got the reaction, linked in the description down below. I drop 45-minute to 2-hour-long reaction videos there every Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. But if you become a Patreon member, you get early access to all of those. And on top of that, you get your name listed at the end of every single video I literally ever produce on the main channel, on the second channel, on every channel. And of course, when I say you get your name listed, if you're a $3 member or higher, you get your name listed and read aloud at the end of every single video I ever produce. On top of that, I do have my Twitch that got the controller linked in the description down below. If you want to chat with your boy live about any theories, any discussions, anything, literally ever, come to the stream. I read every single chat. I talk about literally everything and anything over there. So there's that link in the description down below. And if you want to drop 5 beans for a short video for the one time, 25 beans for a long video the one time, or any beans at all, any support is always greatly appreciated. The link to my Ko-Fi is in the description down below. But now I want to thank you so much for watching, and hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Guillaume, Bura Ura, Enzo, Swift Strike, Silver Flame Zero, Yuki Ally, Strike a Man, Grim, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, CCC, Romano Furen, Dino, Heath Nelson, Hector Gonzalez, Black Sage, Tim Thomas, Kaving, Julian Perez, Akolade Babatunde, Union I, RXN, Nevis97, Logan Guzman, Dead Meme, Karudir, Christian Carter, Jagoda, Keon Stewart, Donovan McIntosh, Sino King, Hamza Idrisi, BNA DNA, Edwin Igmignoba, Cyan, Straw, Cybersage 12, Athen Shear, Antavius Mitchell, Plant Crone, Azo2404, Kriya Panem, Zapro, Weary Exile, Karina Hernandez, Sheesh King, Window Life, Alex Kenny, Victor Jacobs, Todd, and Dre. Then let me thank you to Art Light Art Tier patrons: A+A, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, Dread Zoen, Midnight Lord 21, Wind Draco, Alyssa Bujanos, CJ, and Brandon Cathell. Then I'd even thank you to our Ink Tier members: King RGX and Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06. Then I'd even thank you to our Digital Art Tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. Then I'd even thank you to our Colored Art Tier patrons: Walkie Munoz and Walkie Munoz.